Human trafficking is a form of modern-day slavery in which people are illegally traded for commercial gain or exploitation. The United Nations Office of Drugs and Crime reports that sexual exploitation accounts for nearly 80% of cases, and at any given time, millions of people are victims. Our next guest knows something about when children are involved. Tyler Schwab is the founder and CEO of an organization helping to prevent children in the Dominican Republic from falling into this terrible fate, as well as rescue and heal others not so fortunate. How do you explain to people what this is?
Human trafficking is the movement of persons for exploitation, whether that be forced labor, forced begging, or sexual exploitation. You know, a lot of people think that slavery ended with Abraham Lincoln, and it didn't. There are more slaves today than there ever was in the time of Abraham Lincoln. There's 27 million people enslaved today in slavery, and 2 million of those being children. And those kids, they're often exploited for sexual purposes. So when people ask what modern day slavery is, I point them to human trafficking and say human trafficking is modern day slavery.
And what does your organization, Gifts of Grace, have to do with this?
Gifts of Grace, what we do is we seek to prevent child sex trafficking in the Dominican Republic. The Dominican Republic, it's been called by some experts the Walmart of child sex trafficking, because people can go down to the Dominican Republic in a weekend, engage in their evil behavior, and then come back for work on Monday like it was no big deal. And it's a fairly cheap flight to the Dominican Republic compared to other places. And so my organization, Gifts of Grace, what we seek to do is prevent child sex trafficking. And a lot of the times what traffickers will do is they'll go to poor families and they'll talk to the parent and they'll say, hey, like your daughter, like she's so pretty, she could be a model. Or if they're not in school, they say, we could help pay for her education. All she would have to do is come work in a factory or something like that. So the parents, wanting a better life for their children, send their children with these traffickers, and that education, that promise of these great blessings, they never happen. And what they do is they're sold in brothels, on the streets, to pedophiles seeking to engage in that behavior. So what we do is we seek to prevent that from happening. We promote awareness among the low-income communities in the Dominican Republic, and kids that aren't in school are the prime targets for traffickers, because there's that promise of let me take your kid and let me get them in school, let me get them into a nice school, get them an education and give them a better life than what you have. And the parents wanting that will send their children with them. So my organization, we help pay for their school, we help pay for their tuition, their school supplies. For children that have been rescued from this evil, we help pay for their tuition so they can go back to school. And so this experience that they've passed through doesn't define who they are, but their future is bright through education. And so basically that's what we do, is we just try to combat the root causes of what causes these families to give their kids to these traffickers, and hopefully we can prevent that from happening.
Prevention through higher aspirations and opportunity.
Exactly.
Where did you get this idea?
Well, I lived in the Dominican Republic for 2 years. I was a missionary for my church there. And, when I was there, my eyes were very, opened to what poverty really looked like. I thought poverty was something entirely different. But when you see somebody living out of a box, a cardboard box, you know what poverty is. And so one day, I saw this dad, and he was beating his daughter. I assume it was his daughter, and she was wearing something along the lines of a pillowcase, something like you'd see in Harry Potter with the house elf in that story. And she was taking him food, and she had just got done mopping the floor, and she tripped and fell. So this man grabbed her by the hair and struck her with a whip across the face. And so me and another person that was with me kind of stepped in between there and tried to stop that from happening. But I walked away with that experience, just with a realization of what actually goes on in that country as far as exploitation of children. And that night, we were headed back to the apartment where we lived, and I saw this 9-year-old girl, and she was dressed like a prostitute. She was wearing clothes that weren't meant for a 9-year-old girl. And she was hanging out with this old man. He had to have been in his 50s or 60s, and he was American. And I didn't understand what human trafficking was at that time. So I see the situation, and it seems off. But I didn't think anything of it. I think I may have thought that girl needs to put on some clothes. Then I went my way. And it wasn't until I was back in the United States and I heard someone talk about human trafficking where it clicked that what I had witnessed that night was was a young girl being exploited by an older man, and so it led me to study of human trafficking and just how rampant it is in the Dominican Republic. And when I realized how those people, I spent so much time with them, that they have a hold on my heart and have a special place in my heart, and I love them and I want the best for them, and I always knew I wanted to help them. And when I found out what was going on with the kids and the exploitation that goes on, I couldn't just sit by and do nothing. So that's how Gifts of Grace was started. We were started 2 years ago, and to this point we've helped over 75 children get into school, have their school supplies bought, their tuition paid, and we hope to continue along this process and hopefully help a lot more kids in the Dominican Republic, and then take this model and spread it worldwide so that kids aren't trafficked as easy by those people looking to exploit them. And we want to bring, a big thing with us is just awareness. And here in Wyoming, I don't know if we're as aware of human trafficking as we should be. I mean, just in the Cheyenne area, you look in the last 3 or 4 months, I mean, the Frontier Rodeo, that big rodeo happened. I'm not a big rodeo person, but I heard it's a big rodeo. But 15 people were arrested there for trying to buy sex from an underage girl. So it's happening in Cheyenne. Just I think a month ago, a man with the largest collection of child pornography in the whole United States was arrested in Cheyenne. And it's those people that are addicted to child pornography, that are the ones that will pay to go overseas and engage in sexual activity with a child. So, I mean, if you don't think human trafficking is happening right here in Wyoming, you're wrong, because it is happening here in Wyoming. There's people that are out looking to purchase children for sex, and as a community, just as a nation, I don't know if we're as aware as we could be. So a lot of my work here in Wyoming, as well as growing the organization, is just raising awareness in this area, in this state, and hopefully kind of setting an example or following the example of some states who have taken a fight against this organization to say, Wyoming, we fight for our kids. This slavery is not okay. We support organizations that seek to fight this slavery, and in Wyoming, child sex slavery is not okay with us.
You have an event coming up to raise money as well as increase awareness. Tell us about that.
Yes, so one of our partner organizations, they're known as Operation Underground Railroad, and what they will do is they'll put on a hidden camera and they'll go pretend to be sex tourists, people that go and look to engage in sexual activity with children. And they'll work with local law enforcement and kind of set up like a sting, and law enforcement comes in, everybody's arrested, the traffickers are arrested, and the kids are saved. And that organization put out a film called The Abolitionists. The Abolitionists follows this organization on hidden camera as they go to Colombia and Haiti and rescue kids from sex trafficking. And along with watching their missions, they also, provide information on what sex trafficking is, the numbers, how to recognize it, and it's just a great awareness documentary as a whole, and it's up for an Oscar. So if you get a chance, check them out, because they're up for an Oscar. And so Gifts of Grace is hosting that showing November 2nd at 7:30 p.m. at the Carmike Frontier Theater in the Cheyenne Mall. It's a big event for us. You can go to our website, Gifts of Grace, WY/abolitionist, and buy your tickets. It's a big event for us as fundraising, but even, it's big for us because we get some donations from it. But even if we didn't get any money from it, it's still a big event just for the state of Wyoming, just to become more aware of what people are doing to fight this evil, and just so people know what this evil is. Because 2 years ago, if you would have asked me if you would have asked me and told me that people travel overseas to engage with sex and children, and they pay for sex with children here in the United States, I wouldn't have believed you. That kind of evil was just so unfathomable to me that I wouldn't have believed you even if you would have told me. But it's real, it's happening, and this event as a whole is a great event for people to become more aware on Gifts of Grace, obviously, but just the cause of human trafficking and child sex trafficking as a whole.
Tyler, thanks for sharing your concerns with us today.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you for having me on the show.